Hello, everybody, and welcome in. We all know the world's crazy right now. We know the world is strange, and it's been doing this for a long time 20 plus years. And I think it has all the way, or everything to do with all the way back when we started doing MK Ultra experiments. When the government started looking into ways to control people. Now, I know a lot of people, mind control, and they think it's one thing. But the reality is that it is not. Mind control has more to do with limiting your options than telling you what to do. Mind control is about pushing you back into a corner and making your beliefs extreme, making you have to adopt a radical viewpoint just to combat what you're faced with. You feel attacked. You feel like you've been marginalized. And this goes for all sides. I mean, you listen to anybody, whether it's comic books, whether it's politics, whether it's movies, whether it's just friendly conversations with somebody. If they support X thing and it's not something you support, you have a hard time seeing things from their point of view. And that's really what's going on, is that we're having a hard time seeing things from others' point of view. In fact, the very empathy that we're supposed to be learning, the sympathy for the next person, whoever that may be, we're supposed to limit it. Why? Why are we supposed to attack a person for their personal beliefs? This is not how you're ever going to change somebody's mind. And damn sure you ain't going to get yours changed. If you're already pointing yourself like a weapon, a literal mental weapon at the person you're debating, you're going to lose. But so is the other person. No, I'm just trying to, look at things in a way that solves problems. I don't want to add to problems. I don't want to frustrate and anger people. I want solutions. It's what I have done for as long as I can remember. Somebody brings me a problem, I try to find a solution, because I don't know how many people are here and are just having trouble getting chat to communicate like I had earlier today. And I mean, this is all part of it. This is part of what I'm talking about, is that a lot of times what we think are bugs sometimes are actually engineered. I'm not saying everything. Please understand, I'm not saying everything is like that. No, Kick's having problems too. I didn't know you were on Kick. I've actually contemplated going over there, or multi-streaming there. I know a lot of people have opinions. I don't really. I just know that, hell, Elon Musk called out friggin' Jeff Bezos on Twitch today or yesterday, one of the days recently. Well, I tried, streaming on YouTube, and I realized that's not going to do any good. And, most of you know me from here. I'd like to figure out, expand an audience or something, but I think I want to wait and get a little bit more comfortable with what I'm doing, a little bit more confident before I start expanding the audience too far. And I think, again, this is a lot of problem people have. Exactly. YouTube literally hates me sometimes. So, it was just I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to simplify things, and I'm just going to refocus. I've got a lot of personal stress right now that I don't particularly want to talk about. It's just, I'll get through it, but it's just dealing with this liminal spot right now. And it's not a big deal. I know it's just a matter of time, but it happens every time my wife gets laid off from a job. Oh God, when's the next job going to come in? What's going to happen? Are we going to, but we're going to be fine. But again, this goes to, I like to solve problems. That's what I do. And so my brain's constantly trying to solve the problem when I can't do anything about it anyway. I don't have solutions for a lot of things. What I do have solutions for is looking at the world in a different way. Our modern world has gotten crazy. We have to spread ourselves so thin and force ourselves into positions that we don't like. We feel attacked, pushed into a corner. And we have to adopt some kind of extreme opposite belief because this person is attacking us. So anything they believe in has got to be the antithesis of me because they're attacking me. And I think that's largely a problem we have right now, is that we keep making people us versus them. We keep making people an enemy. Rather than looking at their views, their beliefs, and judging them for ourselves, personally, personal people that we meet in life. And if, hey, that person's toxic, cut them out. There's no problem with that. But we automatically judge a book by its cover. Because we forget that person is probably being combated or basically treated the same way you're being treated in some other area of their life. We have a hard time having empathy. That's the hard part. Or sympathy, I'm not sure if empathy or sympathy is the right word. Because empathy, you emotionally understand that person. Sympathy, I think, is like you can actually put yourself in their shoes. But, I can understand the plight of an addict, but somebody addicted. But I have never been an addict. So I can't empathize with the addict, but I can sympathize with the addict. I can understand that something that they did, who knows how many years ago, got a hold of them and trapped them. But I can't say, oh, I know how you're feeling. No, I can't. So that's why it gets difficult when to use empathy or sympathy. And I really want to be correct about it. So I, me, I try. Whether it's political views, fandoms, whatnot, we are constantly putting, us versus them. We're always making it about two sides. Next time you have somebody that's challenging your views, play devil's advocate with it. What if they're right? What if you're the one wrong? And you may not end up totally agreeing with them, but you might understand a way of, maybe making it better. Like I've struggled back and forth with the ICE immigration rates. Like, okay, they're here illegally, and as long as they're getting illegal people, that's good, except for we're punishing the wrong people. I just realized, just a few days ago, so this was my mistake. Why aren't we going after the companies that hire them? If we're so worried about the immigration crisis, why aren't we going after the companies that are making the money off of exploiting these people? Why aren't they getting punished? They're the ones that are artificially depressing wages, not the workers. They don't choose what wage they get hired at. When was the last time you did that? They don't choose to be hired. They put in an application and they want to get hired. But who chooses the applications? You start to ask yourself why. Why are they choosing these quote unquote illegals? And yes, I put that in quote because, a lot of times they are legal, but they're on a visa that depends on the company. They're still exploited. And I think that's why we need to revise our immigration rules. And this is just an example. But we have to make sure that we're punishing the right people, that we're punishing the proper mechanisms that create the problem in the first place. It's like, oh man, kids these days, they're all so brain rotted. Well, what's causing them to get brain rotted? Well, combination of school, short form media, and parents not parenting. Simple solutions then. Find ways to reform the school, get parents the tools and education they need to be better parents. Because, a lot of us had effed up childhoods that we had to, if we have kids, we have to learn how to do it on our own because our parents weren't there. Our parents weren't good at it. So, and you can't really blame your parents because they didn't have a rule book. They didn't have any way to actually raise their kids. But there's only so much responsibility you can take. So at one point, you can raise your kid as much as possible. You're responsible up until they leave the house. You have a good night, Dormants. And that's my opinion. You don't kick kids out immediately. I left home at 18. As soon as I was legally allowed to, I was gone. I slept in my car. I slept on the streets to get away from my home. Part of the reason why I worked so hard to be better for my kids. They chose when to leave, when to move out. I wasn't kicking them out or anything like that. They chose when to move out. It was entirely their choice. And I'm fine with it. They're doing fine on their own. Struggling just like I did initially, but moving on. Finally understanding all of those tips and tricks I tried to teach them as they grew up. But see, what's really rotted the world, I don't even want to say this generation, this moment in time, is propaganda experiments, MK Ultra experiments, because it's not just for government anymore. It's working on advertising, on your algorithms that get you to buy something, to get you to watch something. They're trying to control your choices by limiting your choices to a standard few. What's up, McQuacky? I always thought you were Ninetales or Rando Brando, but, I'll take McQuacky. I like saying McQuacky. 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 And we don't understand all of the mechanisms that psychology uses now. It's quackers. Speaking of psychology, color psychology. The Affleck duck. The Ben Affleck duck. We don't understand the psychologies that are used against us all the time. From colors to shapes to tones. These things hit us on a visceral level. These things spark primal effects in our brains. We all have a color that we tend to favor over another. But we also have colors that we associate with something. But there's a deeper level to color psychology. Why almost always is fire red? But because fire is red. But there's also different colors of fire. If you look at a flame, it's more orange, yellow than it is red. But you don't think of those colors when you think of fire. Because it's also associated with passion. Sometimes anger, sometimes love, but passion. Something you get really heated about. Even our language towards it invokes a feeling of temperature. Blue, calming. You know, hey, I'm cool. Hey, chill out, man. Hey, cool. Correct. But I'm talking about the basics. You know, when you think of certain colors, what's the first things you think of? You know, and that's what I mean is that we really don't understand how much these things affect us, how much they break us down in certain ways. I mean, yeah, exactly. Red, yeah, very common, you know, very common. And we don't realize, we'll take the recent Cracker Barrel fiasco. Apparently, they spent $700 million to just put everything back the way it was. Well, I have a thought for you. When your colors combine, right? I am Captain Crayon. Cracker Barrel spent 700. Well, that's because they've already reverted them. They've already literally just decided to do nothing. And the few stores that were started, they're going to be putting them back. And I'm wondering if this was their fallback. I'm pretty sure that their whole plan was to actually remodel the stores and stuff like that. So as they had to retract, because I'm pretty sure they were going through budgetary issues. They were losing money. Now, not necessarily like their profits were going negative, but they weren't making as much profits as they were. And so they were planning on being able to sell these stores, so they had to take the character away. It's why all McDonald's look the same as every Wendy's, as every Starbucks, you know, why they all look so generic. All these stores look generic because that way they can just swap. You know, the Starbucks on the corner now becomes a McDonald's. Then it becomes a Burger King, or then it becomes a video repair shop, or video repair shop just shows my age. A cell phone store. You know, they can interchange easily. You know, the floor plan's generic, and everything has become, why am I psychic? I'm curious, Infinite, why you think I'm psychic? Well, what did I say? Well, hopefully I help you with that. And the problem is that we've allowed our world to become generic. And the few things that still stand out, like Cracker Barrel, we start to avoid until it's brought to our attention again. Too many stores and Starbucks is the example. Exactly. Because it's easy to fill the role, just a slight, you know, change. You can't put too much character into things. I miss the old Pizza Huts. I miss the old Pizza Huts where kale had its purpose. Kale was that green lettuce they used to put around the ice that they put all the salad bowls in for their salad bar. And, well, yeah, I mean, the advantages and disadvantages of having so many stores. So the funny thing about Starbucks and where I used to live, we had 3 Starbucks in one intersection. Yeah, Pizza Hut was awesome. Back when they cared more about their in-store people than the delivery. Back when it was a restaurant, not a to-go place. And I think a lot of people have forgotten, especially after COVID, that the world used to have destinations. That we used to have places to go, to be, to meet with people, even necessarily people you didn't like. But because you had to be in public, you had to tolerate them. And there's the key. This is why they're doing it. So we don't have to tolerate people. So we don't interact with our neighbors. So it's much easier to divide us. Right. I mean, yeah. Yes, like exactly. Everybody's forgetting that, and the stores are encouraging it. Kroger hasn't lost any money. I guarantee you they haven't really lost any money. They're just trying to push you to go to their bigger store, which is cheaper for them to maintain. Same with the Dollar General, same with, Sonic. They're trying to get you to conglomerate into one store or just get it delivered. And if you want to do the best thing you can ever do for any store or anything like that, stop getting DoorDash, Uber Eats, Postmates, whatever delivery service you have. If it is not a delivery service that goes from the store itself, but you have to go through an online menu, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, exactly. But it's something that stores also do, is they will close a location to force you to go to another location to drive a little further because it's cheaper for them to maintain a big store or one store. It's the same thing as when you downsize your workforce and say, oh yeah, we're going to be hiring those people back, but you put 2 or 3 times the amount of work on one person. If they're going to do the work, why hire the next person? Because now I'm getting it cheaper for one. They all have these bubbles. Like when I worked for Domino's, you had this bubble around the store that we didn't deliver outside of unless it was special reasons. TB? What is TB? I'm not familiar with that one. Or at least the acronym. I'm probably familiar with it. Taco Bell. Jeez. Yeah. Right. I don't understand why. I don't get it. I don't understand because on one hand, these stores want as many people as possible. They want as many customers as possible. They want all these people to come to them. The only problem is they keep pushing the customers away too, or forcing the customers to go even further and further. And they have to play this little game with how far do we make them go and still retain a certain number of profits. Yeah. We're pushing out mom and pops because a big conglomerate like Starbucks can buy in bulk, which saves them the 10%. And that 10% can be made cheaper. And then once they push out all of the mom and pops, they start raising the prices like Starbucks did. Yeah, dang. I'm sorry that, yeah. I mean, like you have to choose how far. That's the numbers they do. And me personally, I think every company is a real estate company. I don't care what good or service they sell. Their first business is real estate. That's why there was so many Starbucks stores. Because they were owning the block. They were owning the town. They were pushing everybody else out because you only had the choice. Because right before Starbucks started taking over, at least in my neck of the woods, we had umpteen million different little, latte carts. Not carts, but, I don't even know what to call them. They were just like little coffee kiosks. Well, we had three in one intersection. We had one that had its dedicated store. We had one in the Safeway, or I think it's Vaughn's here, or whatever, one in a grocery store. And then they had one just a little down the road in the same parking lot as the one that was in the store. They had 3 just in that short area. 2 dedicated stores on either side of the road. They got you coming and they got you going. And if you were in the store, you could go there. But I remember when you could go into a Starbucks, sit, get a coffee, and enjoy the music and hear yourself. I hate tile or solid surface flooring in restaurants. It makes them so loud. I miss carpeting. You know, you think back and listen to an old movie or something where you have a diner and they have the diner that looks like generic diner with the hard surface floor and how much it echoes. And then you have in the same movie, you go into a restaurant that has carpet and the conversation is muffled. This was real life. This is actually how it worked. And I'm tired of having to yell to be heard in a friggin' restaurant. I'm tired of how much that noise assaults me and I just want to get out, which is exactly why they do it. They want you to come in, get your food, get out. Because the faster they can turn over that table, the quicker they can fill it. They don't think of the time if you give somebody a chance to sit there, talk with their compatriots and blah, 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 they might get dessert. They might order another drink, a different drink, not the free refill you're giving them of soda. It's like, oh, well, now I want coffee or now I want a tea. You know, they're not engendering a familiar feeling to the restaurant. They don't want you to come back until they do. They want you to come in, get your stuff and get out. And then come back when you forgot how bad it was. Like there was this new restaurant that opened up where I used to live. I love Mexican food or south of the border food. I'm not even gonna, because I mean I'll eat. I've had El Salvadoran, Guatemalan, and I love Central and South American food. And this one was supposed to be more of a not the Baja style, but more of the Yucatan inner on the Gulf style. And I can't remember. They called it La Playa something, the beach. And the food was excellent. I never went back because it was so loud. And, it was really sad. It was really sad because it was a good place to eat. But every surface was solid or glass. And I couldn't hear jack. It's just like this one place, Mod Pizza. Everything is built like a garage. Concrete floors that the sound reflects right off of. Metal walls, the hipster garage aesthetic, which I kind of like. I mean, it's kind of cool. Nice industrial look. But if you're a restaurant, you can't hear. Put up some tiles to absorb the sound. It depends on which mod. It literally differs from restaurant to restaurant because of their hiring style. They are very situational. And again, this all goes back to the psychology of a place. So you want your people to come in, grab and leave. Right. The one I went to, the first one I went to was absolutely wonderful. They had the wood-fired pizza, or not wood-fired, but, fired pizza. You got to pick your toppings and, it's like Subway. It's a flat rate for whatever style you get. And then you can add whatever. It's wonderful. The next one I went to, which was in the same state, I think, but several hours difference because me and my buddies would go on these trips to different comics and card shops. We called them swag trips. And we'd go, with a certain budget and go buy up stuff to build our magic decks or to fill out a comic collection that we were trying to fill out. Whatever fandom thing we were going through. And this one was up in the Seattle area. And it was garbage. It was like their pizza didn't cook all the way, but they were in such a rush, they just pulled it out anyway. And I was not impressed. So it really does depend on which one you go to. And I've noticed that with a lot of fast food. It's like, oh, you go to McDonald's, so you know what you're getting. It's like, yeah, but that isn't really right because every McDonald's I go to It depends. It varies from place to place. You know, same with every other restaurant, fast food joint or whatnot. You know, they don't follow their code of conduct when they're told, you know, it's like, oh yeah, we want this consistent quality. Yeah, for a while, and then they just kind of fall flat. They stop caring. And McDonald's doesn't care, the corporation, because they're leasing that property to the person. And if that person fails, they'll just lease it to the next one. You know, they're still getting their money no matter how many burgers the people sell, because the people have to have a static amount they have to pay for that franchise. McDonald's doesn't even make burgers anymore. Oh, yeah. You know, they want to split up your... They want to ensure that you go as far so you have an emotional investment once you get there. They get you addicted to the little store close, and then they want you to go further away, or the bigger store close, or whatever it is. Whatever their cost benefit analysis is on keeping the bigger or the smaller store. They might keep the smaller store because there's a larger density of population. Right? Yes, you can. You know, it really depends on store to store. And I don't know how to explain, but I'll try because that's what I do. How much it infuriates me that we stopped worrying about the product and we started worrying more about the profit. How much money can I make off a said thing, rather than, hey, can I make a thing that people actually want to buy, that I don't have to advertise and shove down their throat until finally they break and buy it? I'm sick and tired of being pigeonholed into very tight, narrow things that don't fit me, because they've pushed out everybody that actually made stuff that I liked. You know, I mean, often I can say it feels targeted, like I'm targeted, but it's not really me personally. It's because I'm a big guy. Shoes don't last. Pants don't last. Shirts don't last. Cars, I have to find specific cars to fit in, and they're not the cars you would think. You know, I mean, going to a motel, the bed's going to be uncomfortable because it's not made for a guy my size. You know, I mean, there's a difference between a hotel queen and a queen you get at home. They're literally smaller. They're bigger than a full, but they're smaller than a normal queen. Take out a measurement sometime, and you'll realize that there is a difference. You know, and that's why, you know, they push these California king beds, or king beds, which aren't really that good either. You know, but I mean, hotels be hoteling. You know, I would never use an Airbnb or a Vrbo or any of those things, because at least a hotel has a very specific, but yeah, exactly, solving problems by accident. It's what we do. You know, companies squeeze profit wherever they can, but they forget that their first job, well, and yeah, that's the other problem. The companies forget that their first job, don't tell a hoe, don't tell a hoe, don't tell me. Anyway, oh my God, that sucks. So you have that like weird dome. Oh, I hate that. I always feel like I'm trying to fall out of bed. Where was I? What was I talking about? I lost my thought. Huh. Sorry. This is my third time being on today, by the way, so I'm a little probably off. because I was on at 11 this morning with CT. Then I played fishing with Ghost and them. It's so difficult. Like, how much is selling yourself is too much? You know, and that's what I was talking about. It happens. Me and CT were just BSing. I watched his new video and live reacted to it. His 12-minute video that took me a half hour-ish to get through because I kept stopping and talking. And I forgot to record it. Because it was early in the morning for me, so I screwed it all up. But I mean, I can still download the VOD from Twitch and post it up on YouTube later. Because there's not really a whole lot to see. But honestly, again, CT killed it with his script writing and his intro and outro. Absolutely killed it. Raven killed it for the narration because he's the one that's narrating again. And just absolutely killed it. And then we just kind of BS'd back and forth about various different conspiracy theories. Because, I mean, what I think surprised CT is that, certain of these things, I mean, we're pretty deep into the iceberg. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know that one. I had a thought about this, and this is what I thought about it. And he's like, I never thought about that way. I'm like, well, that's just me. I think things weirdly, which is a blessing and a curse. I look at things from different perspectives. Like companies, forgetting that they're actually supposed to provide a product, not just squeeze you for profit. They're supposed to provide us with something we want. And when we don't want it, we stop buying it. They buy up the company that we're buying from instead and force us to buy their crappy product. Microsoft did it. Apple did it. Everybody's doing it now. That's why we keep getting concentration of media into these big conglomerates. Anytime you have something good that everybody wants to make their own version of it or buy out the company that did it, so they stop it. Forgetting that, wait, isn't capitalism, like at its core, about letting the market decide what they want, not forcing people to buy what you want to sell them? Isn't it supposed to be the consumer demand is what drives the price? Consumer demand drives the product, not supplier demand shows you what you can have. Well, you'd think, but that's why we call this end stage capitalism or crony capitalism, because they're all working together too. Companies don't compete like they used to because they're all sharing board members. And the government kind of gets, we're supposed to have a separation of government and private companies, right? Look at the last 20 years of these regulatory commissions, and you'll find that board members hop into regulatory commissions that are run by the government and then hop back to their board member job. Or they're sharing CEOs with the FCC for communications companies. It's all such an interconnected web because we're concentrating the wealth, which means we're concentrating who gets put into these positions. So they have to share because there's not enough people to go around on every board. So they control all of this. It's all backside. It's not a conspiracy. And I really want people to understand that. This isn't intentional. This is rich people taking advantage of things so they can make themselves richer. That's it. COVID wasn't a conspiracy. COVID was just like, oh, hey, we got a chance to really shake up how we do things. Let's do that. Here's some price gouging over here. Here's some good prices over here. Watch what happens. Yeah, you can stay at home. Well, we didn't like that because people were spending way too much time at home. They were more productive and more satisfied, which makes them harder to control. And so we got to fix that. So I'll get back to the office. Yeah, I know I'm going to have to pay for the overhead on this building, but I'm trading on the debt of the building. And so if the property value goes down, I lose money. Because that's all that's why you had to go back to the office. That's why they're still trying to get people back to the office, because property values are sinking in downtown areas, which is the plateau of friggin' property values. You know, if you think about property values like a topography map, and you'll see these weird valleys where property values drop. But then if you layer it over time, you'll notice that gentrification retains a cycle of building things up just so they can fall again. See, they build it up so that the developers can spend it a bunch of money. They develop it, they get paid a lot of money because people buy all the nice new stuff. Oh, you made this neighborhood look so great, blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah, but we lost all the history. But who cares? It looks so great. You know, don't manage that we, pushed a bunch of people out. Don't think about that. But, we made a lot of money as a developer. And then about 5 to 10 years later, it all starts falling apart because they flipped the neighborhood. They didn't build a neighborhood. They flipped it. Just like a house flipper who does all these quick fixes just so they can flip the house while it looks nice, get people emotionally advantaged. Oh, I really like this. This looks nice. And as soon as they do that, developer cuts and runs. He's made his bag. Now you have to live with plastic piping rather than copper. But it looked copper, but once you go into the walls, it's all plastic. You have to deal with, they forgot to insulate the pipes. All these things that you should have had an inspector do, but you forgot that their inspector was paid by them. You should have paid for your own inspector. So you're left with the bag. You're left with all the garbage. And that's why these gentrification things go up and down. But you'll notice that downtowns really don't fluctuate in value. Not in the same scale. Downtowns are always worth money. They're always worth a reasonable chunk. It takes a lot to get a downtown to drop down. It's always a big relation to the city around it. So you can lose value, but it's overall value. If you understand what I mean. If the downtown starts losing value, every other property in the town loses value. Because it basically means the town is dying. So you have to have this downtown anchored. That's why working from home was so dangerous, because you didn't have to have a downtown anchor. You could live states away from your job and nobody really cared. Right? I mean, and I'm not perfect on this. I know it's not a perfect answer to what I'm talking about, but it's really damn close, and I know it. It's why companies are real estate companies. I don't care what they buy or sell. I mean, how much real estate does Facebook own? A company that barely sells anything other than your data. Oh, it's not that they don't want to sell it. It's they can't, because it's not worth anything. If nobody's in there, if the office isn't active, it reduces its value. So they're willing to pay the overhead value, because a lot of people forget that once you reach a certain level of wealth, you trade on debt, not wealth. I'm so frustrated with companies putting the solutions behind paywalls. And we know there's we know there's a solution. But that solution would mean a reduction in the corporate profits as a general rule. You look up walkable cities and how they have zoned their neighborhoods. And you look at American zone neighborhoods. We have large chunks of residential, large chunks of commercial, large chunks of industrial. which means you can't walk to work. You have to drive. You can't intermix. I mean, I had this idea of, all those dead malls that we used to have. Turn them into apartments. Most often, they're in a neighborhood that needs workers. People need jobs. Turn all of those old stores that nobody's using anyway into floor space. I mean, you've got the mains, you've got the electricity, you've got the water there. It wouldn't be anything to route it all into houses. Hell, if you really want to get fancy with it, you could make indoor neighborhoods, cul-de-sacs with little, faux houses. Is there really? Okay, well, I mean, you get my point. I mean, hell, in one of my stories that I had the idea of having people live above the store that they're renting from the mall to sell stuff at. We're going back to handmade crafts. And this was an old thing that people used to do. They used to live above their store. And it wasn't even that long ago. And, if you're upstairs with your 3D printer, let's really cyberpunk it. You're upstairs with your 3D printer or your knitting needles or whatever, and you're making the items that are going into your store just downstairs. I mean, how much more convenient would it be to live in the same neighborhood as where you work? Hell, get a job at a C-store just down the road. But wait, those jobs don't pay very well. So you can't afford to even live in the neighborhood you work in. That should be fixed in some way. That the neighborhood you're living in, you're working in, you should be able to buy or rent a place in that neighborhood reasonably. I don't understand how hard it is for these companies to realize that if people are happy and productive, they win. And it's all companies. I mean, and hopefully it's for the workers first. I mean, think about that. Getting a job and living right above your work, your commute's 15 minutes, and that's because you took the stairs. And I'm exaggerating on the 15 minutes. When I worked in shipping, my commute was like 30 seconds from my room to the engine room, and that's because I ran. Okay, not ran, I slid down the stairs, put it that way. Put your hands on the handrails and just slide down, land, turn, slide. You get the point. And I was so much more satisfied in many ways living at my workplace, which, I mean, a lot of people see as dystopian. And in a lot of ways it could be, but if it's treated right, it could be very nice. And I also think we need to have more job mobility. Like, if you live in, say, Michigan, and you work for Costco, since we're here, and you have this job board, and say somebody in Florida wants to winter in Minnesota or Michigan because they want to see snow. And you've lived in Michigan your whole damn life. You're tired of the winters. Why don't you guys just swap? As long as you're of the same basic, job class, just swap. And if you already have an apartment above a Costco, you just swap leases. It shouldn't hurt anything. What's so wrong with that? Why is this a wrong thing? I mean, yes, don't get me wrong. It can be exploited. But I mean, having some kind of mobility, some kind of facility, I mean, who cares what job you have? If you're happy doing it, that's all that should really matter. If it pays for your hobbies that keep you coming back to work, great. If you actually enjoy your job and you keep doing it because you enjoy your job, great. Companies should reward this. Well, yeah, everything's exploitable. I can invent a widget that makes you pay every time you flip on a light switch and pay to turn it off. But what's the point? I mean, that's the problem is that when you monetize everything, nobody's making money because you're having to spend the money you just made from the thing you monetize to get the thing you want. You're not really making any money. Everybody's just sitting around in a circle passing money and items. Nobody's really benefiting. I don't even want to know why Europe has pay toilets. Pay to pee, I'll just piss on the lock. Screw you, hippie. I mean, not to be mean to hippies. Screw you, yuppie. Who's ever making somebody pay to pee? Yes, I realize it costs money. And I'm paying one way or the other. At least that's why I'm making a demonstration. And obviously in Europe, they don't really care about their fellow man if they're making people pay to pee. Right? I mean, yuppies is such a old... Because why not in Europe? Why don't they just have the public toilets like that come out of taxes? They could get paid the same. But they come out of the taxes of the accompanying businesses. And they could possibly make more money that way or make less money, but who cares? You are literally monetizing a basic function of human life. How can you monetize that? Dinks and sinks. All right. Dink, 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 dink. I mean, you get what I mean, though. I mean, these dudes literally have to have their brains melted by just dollar signs. They don't understand what they're doing. They don't understand that they're actually actively making the world worse. They're actually, I mean, poor homeless person or just a general poor person can't even use a bathroom when they're on their way to work or when they're on to, for God forbid, on their way to a job interview and they just lost the job because they couldn't afford to pay for a toilet. And so they ended up making a mess of themselves and they had to go home and ditch the interview. Or if they're really desperate, sit there in a puddle. How can you do that to your fellow person? How can you do that? How can you not sympathize with them? That's what's ridiculous to me. How can you not see that that's just the thing that came off the top of my head. That's cruel. That's unusual. I don't get it. I don't understand how we think this way. As humans, how can we think this way? I'm not even shaming Europe anymore. I'm meaning everybody. I mean, everybody needs internet to even function in society today. Everybody needs a cell phone. Why isn't that just a standard thing that gets given to people when they become of age? Here's your cell phone. Here's your, utility voucher. Here's your housing voucher. Go find a place to live that can afford this voucher. I mean, those should be human rights. Food, shelter, what you need to survive in life. I think the state needs to give some things back and not just keep taking. Oh, we provide roads. Yeah, half the time are potholed and crap. Oh, but we provide education, which is so full of holes it might as well be used to fill the potholes. Put the plot holes in the rhetoric too. I mean, they say they provide all this stuff, but it's provided at almost no use. I mean, in some ways, I sympathize with Doge because money's going in. We're spending a whole lot of money on the government, but we ain't getting jack out of it. And I don't care who's in office. We haven't been getting anything out of it for at least since Reagan. And that's just the time I've been alive. I'm sure that it has been that bad for years. Hell, it might even go all the way back to the founding fathers. This may have been wholly engineered within the system itself. I mean, we have fancy words. All men are created equal. Why don't we treat them that way? You know, we have certain unalienable rights. Why don't we treat them that way? Why do we treat people? I don't care what their politics are. I don't. Why do we treat people bad? Why do we try to monetize everything? I mean, it benefited people at the top. Because the schooling we get that we're told is going to be effective, that's going to get us jobs, doesn't get us jobs. I'm sorry to say. We're told to follow our passions, to become whatever we want to be. You know, to kind of quote Fight Club, they lied. The value in a man is what is in his wallet. That's it. It doesn't matter their education. It doesn't matter the color of their skin. It doesn't matter what gender they specify themselves as. The value of a person is what's in their wallet. And it's what would they be willing to part with to help you. The rich are just more good at convincing other people to part with their money. I mean, Elon Musk, what has he ever actually provided for the world? He stole the plans for the cars. Sorry, he bought the plans for the cars and then says he's a founder. He bought the plans for his rockets and then said he was a founder for SpaceX. I mean, I'm surprised he hasn't said he's the founder of Twitter yet. Sorry, Jitter. You know, what service, what has he actually provided? PayPal? Oh, no, he just funded that. Funny. Oh, well, yeah. But you see what I'm saying, though, is that what actual wealth has the richest man in the world right now actually provided to the world? What things of actual use? You know, and we need to understand that these people tell you that they're providing you something. They're providing something when they're really not. They're forcing you to make choices, and they're limiting what choices you have available to you. They want to show you the world and then pigeonhole you into, okay, well, you have this world you can see through your screen, but this is the one we're offering you. They want us living in the dumps because that way we're constantly striving to see the light. They want us constantly striving, but never, ever getting there. I mean, think about Fifth Element and the layers to the city. That's what they want. They want to own the light. They want to keep you striving, but never acquiring, never getting. They want to force you to be less than who you are. Because to actually practice who you are, you end up with a useless bachelor's degree. You end up with a sociology degree and have to ask, do you want fries with that? You know, I mean, because they tell you what jobs you should go for. And then by the time you get there, or sorry, what degrees you should go for, by the time you get there, the jobs are gone. And this is why the world is unfair, because they protect themselves in such a way that they don't even realize that's what they're doing. That every action they have shows fear. Every time Elon Musk buys a company, it shows his lack of self-esteem, his want for approval. Every time Jeff Bezos conquers another company, it shows how insecure he is in himself, because he is not sufficient with himself. He is not happy with who he is, because they're taught not to be happy, to always strive, to always push. Even the rich suffer from this problem. Even the people you think that have all the wealth in the world, they should be happy. They should be content with what they have. No, once you reach a certain level, you have to keep going. You have to. It's psychological. Because we value the wrong things in the world. I mean, one of my favorite examples, I probably already used this once. I don't really care. Gold. It's useful in very specific industrial applications. It's a great conductor. You can't build with it. It's a trace element in you. It really has, in terms of function, very little. But it is one of the most highly valued things on our planet. So much so that there is certain scientific agreement that our brains are keyed to the color gold. That we reach a certain level of, I can't remember if it was satisfaction, I'm not exactly, but when we grab gold, there's this feeling. We get a tactile, we know gold when we see it on an average basis. You know, and it could be fool's gold, but I mean that particular color. And yet it has very, I mean, when was the last time you used gold around your house? And I'm not talking about jewelry. I can answer for you. Never. I guarantee you, you've never used gold in your house for any practical purpose other than decoration. Yet carbon, the very thing we've demonized, that it's bad, it's this, it's that. Well, alchemy, when was the last time you actually performed alchemy to get gold? But carbon is hands down the most useful element on the planet. It makes up everything. There is nothing in your house that doesn't involve carbon in one manner or another. Well, okay, maybe your water. You know, there are certain things, sure. Last Tuesday. You get my meaning, though. Gold is practically useless compared to carbon. Carbon can be a building material, an insulator, a conductor. Carbon can make babies. Carbon can make cell phones. Carbon can make batteries. Carbon can make jewelry. Carbon can solve a lot of issues. So why do we demonize it? And here's my theory. So companies can buy it cheap. I mean, look up the science behind graphene. It's the next stage material, in my personal viewpoint. And in fact, a lot of videos I've watched, it is the next material. You know, it will be the next age, will be the carbon age. because the carbon age will surpass the silicon age. Just like the silicon age surpassed the steel age. You know, just like the steel age, iron age, stone age, you know. Carbon is a filter. It can filter your water. It can filter your air. Carbon helps trees build, as in carbon dioxide. There is so many things. And yet, nobody even thinks about it. Nobody even really understands why we demonize carbon. And it's because my theory is that they want to be able to buy it up cheap and get massive quantities of it before people realize its worth. Because you want to talk about saving the planet? Solve the carbon equation. Solve graphene. Solve that. You will have pretty close to what we know of as a superconductor that's super light, has, if I remember correctly, 10 times the battery density of the next battery. You know, your cell phone, a battery the same weight as the battery that's in your cell phone is 1/10 the weight with the same energy density. Or if you do it to the same density or the same weight, you have 10 times the energy density. You'll forget to charge your phone, but that's because it lasts a month. The average heat of a city will go down if you start building with carbon. Because carbon absorbs energy, absorbs heat. It's one of the reasons why it's a greenhouse gas if it's coupled with carbon monoxide and dioxide, because it absorbs heat and releases it slowly. It's an energy sink. If you build it right, you could basically have special, you know, not the kind of plugins we think of now, but in the future, you could literally just put your phone against the wall and it charges from the ambient temperature and sunlight that the building has absorbed throughout the day. You know, you know, geothermal housing, carbon can do that at a much easier level. Your house wouldn't need to be hooked up to a grid. Your clothing could charge your phone. I mean, these technologies are a long way off. Exactly, your own kinetic energy. But they're not as far off as people think if we start getting to think about it that way. If we start valuing that which is useful, not that which is rare. I mean, we even demonize people because, oh, you're just using that person. You don't like them for them. I like them because they're useful. You know, whether that use is making me laugh and making them laugh. Whether that use is we just click, we have fun together. That is a useful person to me. If I have to work at liking a person, why am I going to be friends with them? It's nothing personal, but you ever think we might not just click? Just, hey, I'm just not my kind of person. There's nothing wrong with that. It is one of the most intensely personal things that you have no control over. But what we can have is sympathy for that person. That person in our life, it's like, hey, you might not click, but I can help you out. Right. But we also need to see things from their point of view. You know, walk a mile in their shoes. Please, if I have to walk a mile in your shoes, please have big feet. I'm just saying that you don't have to like a person to be polite to them, to understand and to actually try and work with them. Because you know what you might find out? Your initial estimate was wrong. That is a cool person. You do actually make each other laugh, because sometimes a relationship takes work. You can't just keep judging by the surface. I had a bully in junior high. He was 6 foot when I was 5'3". He would beat the crap out of me. Until one day I got pissed off enough. Now, I'm not advocating for violence, but I lost my temper. And I think he understood that I didn't lose my temper because he was bullying me. I just took it. What I did see is that he had his hand drawn back, and it looked like he was going to hit a girl. A girl I had a crush on, but a girl. I lost my temper. I walked up him, stepped on his foot, stepped on his knee, stepped on his belt, and punched him to the ground. I never advocate for violence unless you are defending yourself or others. Never make a preemptive strike. You could have been wrong. Take that for what you will. But after that, he stopped bullying me. Because he realized I wasn't weak. I was fat, I was short, but I wasn't weak. He realized I could have taken him at any time. Or at least done some damage. But what he did realize, really realized, is that I only get mad when I'm defending others. Defense of myself? Meh. I'm big enough I can take it. But defending others? I'll go to jail. I've come close a few times too. And I won't have a regret. And I think we need more of that in this world. We need to take a lot of the self-centered out of world and start looking at that we live in communities. We live in apartment buildings that are made up of people. We need to look at how to help everyone, not just ourselves. Now, don't give so much that you can't help yourself. Don't harm yourself in the making, because then you can't help anyone. If you dig a hole for yourself, you can't do anything but bring people to your level. The first thing you have to do, yes, do something. It's one of the biggest jokes to me in the world. Some tragedy happens. Oh, hearts and, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers don't do much. Might be a world away. You might only have 50 cents you can spare. But 50 cents is 50 cents. Or maybe it's a world away and you can't do anything. But you see somebody broke down on the side of the road. Pull over and ask them if they got somebody helping them. Maybe they've called somebody already. Maybe they've got a mechanic coming. But as long as you check on them, imagine how good you'd feel, even if though you've already got it covered. You've got AAA, they're already on the way. That a stranger stops and asks if you can do anything for them. Hell, you might even have an unopened bottle of water in your car and it's a hot day and they didn't bring anything with them because it was just supposed to be a quick trip to the store. You happen to have a cold bottle of water sitting in your car because you have your AC on. There you go. You've made their day a little bit better. Now imagine putting yourself in their shoes. How much better would you feel? Yet here's the funny part. We've been taught to think that that's bad. What are you, some kind of creep? Well, I didn't see what you did with this water. You might have put some drugs in it. You might be trying to roofie me and kidnap me and take me away somewhere. Yeah, it's a possibility. It's also a possibility the person broke down on the side of the road is just waiting for some nice citizen to pull over so they can carjack them. It's a possibility. 1-2% possibility. Are you willing to leave somebody stranded for a 1-2% possibility? I mean, how many of you buy lottery tickets? You're willing to put your money into that on a percentage basis that's even less than a 1-2%. I understand. You don't have to roll down your window all the way. You don't even have to park close. I mean, all you have to do is, pull up, roll down your window a crack so you can talk to them. Make sure your doors are locked. Be safe. And if they come up and ask, see what you want, just ask them, hey, have you called somebody? Do you need me to call someone? We're taught to fear this. We're taught to be afraid. And we wonder why violence is increasing. I mean, Star Wars did say it. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to the dark side. And we're being taught to be afraid. Even though crime's been on the downswing for a long time. Oh, yeah, that's why I said, can I call someone for you? Don't give your phone over. We have way too much information on our phones. For a long time, I used to keep a track phone, just a stupid little flip phone that wasn't even really attached to me, just so I could call for people, or just so I could hand them so they could call. And they'd ask, well, what if you save my number? Like, it's a track phone, bro. It's my disposable. It's not my real phone. Oh, that's cool. Like, yeah, I keep it charged and in the car just for emergencies, because sometimes I forget my phone. So at least I have an emergency phone. There's little things we can do. And I learned from the Boy Scouts of just be prepared. There's nothing wrong with being prepared. Better to have and not need than to need and not have. Both of my cars have a safety kit in the back. I don't have as much as I should have in there, but I also am not talking like prepper stuff. I mean, full on, surgical first aid kit or bug out bag or anything. It's like, no, I keep some safety kits, some basic tools, and the knowledge up in my head to do whatever else I need. And I get it. In our day and age, it's a lot harder to trust a stranger. And I think that's probably one of the biggest dangers we ever did. That we just said stranger danger. We never taught them to be literate of strangers, to assess, to trust in their own instincts, to teach them instincts when you see a stranger. Did that person park along the side of the road near a hedgerow, near someplace where people could have cover, near a ditch? Are they on the open street? Is there plenty of people? Right? I mean, just simple bottles of water. Bottles of water don't go bad. It'd be better if you used, glass. Exactly. Rando, that is a perfect turn of phrase. I might be strange, I might be dangerous, but hardly ever simultaneously. You may be not simultaneously, but I've acted strange just to make people get away from me because I didn't want to fight. And it's just, I hate how we're reverting to violence, how we're letting fear take over, how we're letting fear stop us from being who and what we want to be. We are so afraid of people not seeing us that we have to shout from the rooftops who we are. But we forget sometimes we just need to listen. we forget that just because they're saying who they are doesn't mean they're trying to tell us who we're not. And take that however you want, because I think it works for all sides. Just because somebody is declaring who they are does not mean they're attacking you. You know, we are so afraid that we get very, very locked in mindsets. And that's both sides. I mean, and that's most likely extreme. The extreme of the world today. But I think we need to understand that the world is getting extreme. And that even people trying to stand in the center are looking very extreme to both sides. And I think that's a very scary position to be in. That's extremely scary for where we are today. That we don't understand how damaging we are being to ourselves, to others, just by being afraid. Because our reactions are going to be different. It's just like when you text on your phone. But if you have like a whole keyboard in front of you, you'll write differently. You'll choose different words. You'll make different choices. It's the same thing with people. If you're afraid of what they present, you're never going to get to know who they really are, because you are judging a book by its cover. You're treating everyone the same. You're stereotyping. While having faith and trust in your fellow man is hard. I can get away with it. I'm big enough, you know, what's the worst that's going to happen? I've already raised my kids, so if they take me out, you know, they have to deal with my wife, and I very, very much fear for them. Because she's calm, cold, and collected when she's her angriest. That is not a person you want going after you. You are, if it's me, I will let you know I'm coming. I will give you plenty of time to barricade your doors, think you're in a very strong place, and I will still figure out a way around. Her, you won't even know she's there. Not until it's too late. And she will find you. And she will find a way to call the cops on you for whatever reason she might believe that you did something to me. This is a woman that stood up to my dad. That was scary. So I'm just saying that, you know, for me, my kids are already out of the house. There's not much you're going to be able to hold over me. Right? Oh, it made me feel very loved and appreciated. I told her as much. So I have the freedom to be a little bit more open. I don't have as much to risk. I know a lot of other people do. So I'm willing to be a little bit more vocal than the average person. I want to believe in the goodness of everybody. But I've also worked as a casino security guard. I've seen the worst in people. I'm not afraid to act. I'm not afraid to defend those who I see needing defended, whether that's through words. I constantly surprise myself. Because the biggest thing I have a pet peeve about, that I absolutely cannot stand, and it's a big reason why I steer clear of a whole lot of jobs and a whole lot of other spaces. I abhor, loathe, absolutely detest people who abuse their power. Tin pot dictators in a friggin' Home Depot. You know, the Karens of Starbucks. You know, people who feel that they have this authority over others and must wield it. No. No. Don't abuse your power. If you have power, you can afford to take the moment and understand the person. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to take up too much of your time to think, to talk about it. But to just make a snap decision because you can't be bothered that little Gracie has to stay home from work because she's got a flat tire and can't afford to buy a new tire until you pay her again. That's not a her problem. That's a you problem as being the boss. Because it is up to Gracie to get to work. It is up to you, if somebody can't make it to work, to fill the spot. It's not their fault that something outside of their control happened. You just need to find a way to fill the spot. And you know what? I'm sorry, you're in management. Then it's your responsibility. If you can't find somebody to fill the spot, to fill the spot. That's why you're paid the big bucks. Because we're forced to keep not having the energy. We're forced to keep, filling our time, distracting ourselves from the lives that are made around us, that we do these things. We're forced to go to this job because we don't have a choice. We're forced to deal with the BS from the boss because we don't have a choice. I had a coworker, this was actually, the tire thing was actually a thing I had to deal with. Yeah. And I told the boss that. I literally told the boss, it's like, oh, well, I can't work it because for whatever reason, well, I don't have anybody else to fill the role. It's like, yeah, you do. Like, what? You're the boss. That's why you get paid the big bucks. Because you're trained on every position in the store. Well, I don't have a car. You work for a pizza delivery joint and you don't have a car, but yet you're the boss? How does that work? Well, I don't have a driver's license. Wait, you're a boss at a pizza delivery joint and you don't even know how to drive? How did you get the job? Well, I had a license back then, but I got too many DUIs. How do you still have your job? Me as a delivery driver, I get one DUI? Yes, at McDonald's. McDonald's doesn't require you to deliver in your car. See, this is a pizza delivery joint, Nine Tails. That's what I mean. If you're a boss, you have to be able to fill the roles. Because it's your job to fill in. Somebody needs a break. You don't have somebody to cover it. Boss, get your butt in there and take the 20. But McDonald's doesn't require you to deliver, so you don't have to have a car or a license. But at a pizza delivery joint, you deliver pizzas in a car. How do you have somebody working there that can't drive? How do you have somebody working there that has a DUI enough that they can't even have a license anymore? How do you keep that person as a boss? They're irresponsible with their home life. How are they going to be responsible with their work life? I know a harsh statement. I understand. I'm not saying that a DUI holding possible alcoholic shouldn't have a job, but I'm saying they shouldn't be in management. For two reasons. Too easy to exploit and too easy to exploit. Because the problem of the worker, he calls in hungover, is like, okay, yeah, I know you're in recovery, so, you made an oopsie, let's work with you. Two, the underlings can exploit it. Hey, man, talking to the GM, I think dude was drunk last night when he wrote me up. You're compromising the person. It's for your protection and theirs. Because you know what happens. And it's BS. It's BS that we live in a world where somebody can be treated as such and exploited as such. I mean, it'd be too easy for the bosses above to exploit him because they know he doesn't have a car, he can't drive. Well, you're there anyway. It's not like you're going to go without, somebody coming and picking you up. So you might as well just stay and finish the shift. This is my third shift today. Well, sorry, sucks to be you. That's why we pay you a salary. We don't have to pay you overtime. I mean, I'm not saying somebody can't have a job without having a license. I'm saying somebody that works for, I don't know, UPS who doesn't have a license shouldn't be a boss. Because you might have to fill in a role on a route. If you can't fill in that role, if you don't have the CDL or whatever it is to drive a UPS truck, you shouldn't be the boss. If you can't fill in the role, that's part of it. I mean, I understand that in today's day and age, we don't live in that culture. And I damn sure wouldn't take a boss at McDonald's job because what's the point? They're not going to pay me what I'm worth if I'm going to have to fill in everybody else's job. If it comes to that. You want to make me a boss, you better make my pay count. If not, I'll just tell you, no, I'll just keep working the fries. Or I'll just keep working in the kitchen. Because also, if they really need a boss, you look at them and it's like, give me a pay raise. You need it that bad. And if more people stood their ground and understood their worth, I think a lot of companies would have a lot better idea of what it takes. Of what it takes to actually run their business. A lot of people run in fear. A lot of people go to work fearing that they'll lose their job and they'll lose everything. Trust me, I know. I've been there. Raising a family, and I was working at a movie theater cleaning, underneath the seats. At night, because my wife worked union jobs during the day. Every time she got laid off, I was worried we were going to make it. We struggled, hand to mouth. I don't know how many months, sometimes all we had was hamburger and ramen. That was the food we could afford. Until, it started working out. We started making more, getting better. And only to lose it all again. I mean, 3 different times we have saved up enough for a down payment on a house and something happens. Right before, a couple years before COVID, we were almost there. And then the housing market spiked. So it was like, okay, well, we'll just wait. We had, I think the wife transitioned, the union, she got laid off. And we had to spend, because it was a long drought of jobs. We had to spend what we had saved up in savings just to make ends meet. Next time it was, we were saving up money, got it almost all the way there. COVID hit. Housing prices skyrocketed. Didn't have money. This last time, we fell for a scam. We tried to buy a house in Indiana that wasn't there. I was states away. I was in Washington. This person tells me, oh, we're going to sign the paperwork. It'll be ready when you get here, this day. All right. I show up a week early just to make sure, there's nothing wrong, nothing going on. Oh, it's probably not going to be ready. We spent a month in motels spending up a lot of our money, and we were running out of the down payment. It's like, okay, well, we had to make choices. And we wouldn't have spent the month in motels if they didn't keep saying this, telling us it'll be done next week. I was so desperate, I kept waiting. I kept waiting until that next week, the next week. Finally, I went in there and they told me, oh, it'll be done, this time. And like I said, I don't give a crap. Thankfully, I had friends that were able to take me in. And we got back on our feet rather quickly. And I basically told them to stuff it. Oh, but, and we never signed any paperwork. That's what I was going there for. I mean, yeah, it was just a house in a trailer park, but I was going to buy the house in the trailer park because I didn't have much choice, at that point. And I don't know. It was tough. Every time we think we've got it, we fall back down. I know the struggle. I know almost everybody in here has that same struggle. Yes, they did. I spent almost all of the money we had saved up for a down payment on a house and a move across the United States. I mean, we had almost 20K saved up. By the time I got down here to Texas, we had 4 or 5K, barely enough to rent a place if we wanted to. And then my wife, got the job, 4.5 hours away from where we were staying. So she had to stay in a motel there. And she was working 6 days a week. We never got to see her. For almost 3 months before she got a day, a holiday off. And we managed to get into this place. So now we're happy. We're together. We're here. The youngest managed to get a place, where she is, near her college. So she can even just go there if she needs to. So she lives, she moved out. So it's just the wife and I and the cat. And, now she's laid off again. And I mean, supposedly by the end of this month, she'll be fine, So we just have to get through this month or maybe the next. Either way, we're going to have to be careful and we're going to be basically spending money that we saved again. That's the struggle that I sit at right now. Every time we think we're getting things rolling and things are going good and something happens and the wheels fall off. I guarantee you that's happened to I don't know how many of you. I mean, I know it happened to Ninetales not that long ago. Now he's starting to put the wheels back on, getting that cart moving forward. I'm not saying, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be afraid to lose your job. What I am trying to say is that be careful. Be careful of what you choose to do, how you choose to do things, because we make a lot of decisions out of fear. And we will deal with things that we shouldn't out of fear, out of being afraid. And that is just so hard. Being afraid is so hard. It's mentally exhausting. But we're taught to be afraid all the time. Job, people around us, what might happen, if, then, why, what. Sometimes we just have to stop. Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's the problem is that we're even seeing it in media being told that we're dreaming too big, that we want too much, that personal security, financial security, health security, and food security is too much to ask for. That the basic minimums to survive and being secure that you will have those is too much to ask for. That's BS. Flat out. Last year, my brother lost his foot because he got sick, probably part of COVID complications and also being diabetic complications. He almost died on Christmas Day. But now he's back up. He lost a foot. He's still learning to deal with it. And he's moving on. Well, it is awful. But he's getting better. I mean, the good thing is that he was guaranteed disability. It's not like that wasn't going to be a shoe-in, because part of the illness that he had also took most of his vision. So he can't really drive too securely. He's not illegal to drive. Like, he still has his driver's license, but he doesn't feel comfortable. And I mean, and that's what I admire. I mean, me and my brother have our issues. We don't talk very often, but I admire that he hasn't given up, that he's still on his feet. He's trying to figure out a way how to make money for himself rather than just being given the disability. And, you know, I keep reminding him that if he makes too much, he'll go off of the medical too, and he'll have to take care of all of that. And, you know, he's like, yeah, I'm being smart about it. You know, I'm not going to go off a disability if it's going to hurt me. And I'm calculating in the healthcare. It's like, okay. I hope he listens to himself. You know, my sister has been through, you know, ex-husband after ex-husband. You know, and it's both their faults. You know, all of, you know, not my brother and my sister. With my sister, you know, she's a good person. She just picks bad people. That she forgets that people lie in the first few dates and how they get, you know, once you start living together, once you sign that paperwork, then everything changes. Not always, but especially for somebody of her generation. I mean, she's a little bit older than me. I'm the youngest. And she forgets to wait, to pay attention to the little things, you know, and that's why our relationship is strained, because I've cautioned her on pretty much every single one. And what I saw ended up coming to be, and I hate being that guy, but that's how it happened. You know, seeing the patterns, that's my skill, if anything, is seeing patterns. And what I'm watching in the pattern of the world around us, I really hope I'm wrong. I really hope I am wrong, because what I see is violence increasing, not decreasing. There are too many people on both sides calling for more violence. We're seeing more violence. I mean, there was a shooting in Pennsylvania just before I came on. You know, 3 cops dead, I think is what they were saying. You know, another shooting, and people are calling for gun control. And it's like, it's not gun control. The guns aren't the ones causing the problem. It's the friggin' anger. It's the fear. It's the media pushing you to a frenzy. It's these radicalization patterns that you see in social media versus, and you know the government's seeing this. NSA is seeing this. They literally snoop in everything, and they're not using the information to calm people down. They're not using this information to lower the temperature. We have the tools, we're not allowed to use them. And I'm not talking authoritarianism, big brother watching over your shoulder. Not in the way that, you know, George Orwell saw, but pattern recognition. Seeing a pattern of behavior and watching these people go from being normal to radicalized. Especially with the rapidity it can happen with now. Months. Less than a year, we can fully radicalize somebody, which means, to me, people are using the old MK Ultra playbook to radicalize people. And they're doing it without direct control. They're doing it remotely through your computer screen, through your phone screen, through your social media. through sometimes your own damn family, because you're twisting their words back. You're twisting that family's words into hate speech when it wasn't really. Because we're not allowed to stop and think about what's happening. We're not allowed to stop and think what's being said to us. We're supposed to absorb it so fast because we live in such a fast world. No, we don't. If anything, everything happens so fast now, you can just take a step back and watch it solve itself if you just relax, because something else is going to happen. You know, you need to pick and choose your battles. And I mean verbal battles. Violence is never the answer. No, I shouldn't say that. Violence, there is a reason for violence, and that is defense of yourself or others. That's it. That is the only time violence is necessary, and it should only be the minimum necessary. Don't take a life when breaking an arm will do. You take away the weapon, you know, breaking the arm, breaking the arms, if they, you know, you take away the weapons, but you don't take away the life. That, I can't believe we've gotten to that point. And I think that's why, yeah, and that's what social media is doing. It is literally breaking the mind and spirit. That's why this all affects me so much. No, you don't need a weapon. You make that person into a weapon. With social media breaking the mind and spirit, you've now turned them into a weapon. When you're defending someone else, in this case, they realize that, hey, if they defend them, you know, that there's more than just one person. You know, they realize you have a lot more people you have to take care of or take out. And you're never going to win that fight. But social media is making weapons. You know, they are weaponizing rhetoric. They are weaponizing thought, feelings on both sides. The extremists on both sides are becoming weapons. And I think that's why this has affected me so much, is because I may not agree with Charlie Kirk, but I never once heard him in any of the clips I could find on both sides actively call for people to be hurt, especially if you found the context. You know, people were saying, oh, he called for, you know, gays to be stoned. And it's like, no, he was quoting Leviticus when somebody quoted another passage of Leviticus to him. And his very next words were, be careful what you pick and choose out of the Bible. Or paraphrasing. So if you watch the full context of these things, it's really hard for me to, you know, people are saying, oh, he's homophobic. Then why did he platform not only a gay man, but a black gay man? Am I wrong? I mean, am I misunderstanding these things? You know, he's misogynist. His wife was literally, they met because he gave her an interview and then told her he couldn't hire her because he wanted to date her. Because he had integrity. He wasn't going to date somebody he worked with. You know, especially when he was the boss, I think is more to the point of what he was meaning. You know, maybe that's all just, you know, set dressing. Maybe that's all just, you know, BS. I don't know, but I couldn't find any counter. Even when I did try to find the people that were saying, you know, the bad things about Charlie Kirk. But when I'd look up and find the clips that they clipped out of and then look at the whole context, it's like, yeah, he was combative. He challenged people's point of view. But I never heard him once try to get angry or try to turn somebody into anger. I don't ever, I didn't see anything where it showed where he was trying to piss somebody off, especially more recently, where he seemed to be cooling off, where he seemed to be calming down a bit more. And I think that's why it affected me, because I'm just a guy talking, telling you how I feel. I'm not saying I agree with anything Charlie Kirk said. You know my words. You know what I'm saying. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm like Charlie Kirk. But I can sympathize. I can put myself in his shoes and know that if somebody takes what I say wrong, the same could be happening to me. Like, it's hard for me to put myself in the foot of a kid in a school anymore. You know, the school shootings, it's like, it is sad, it is terrible, but it's hard for me to sympathize because I've never experienced that. I got bullied in school. The one time a kid brought a gun, me and my buddies all got together and, you know, we understood how to tear apart the gun. So we disassembled it. We never got him in trouble, and we got him the help he needed. We took him physically to the school counselor and said, he needs to talk. Don't let him out of here. And then we went to our classes with a torn apart gun and distributed between our bags. Do you know how much trouble we could have got into? But we did that to protect our friend, and we were willing to go to juvie for our friend. We knew he could have told that school counselor everything, and that we had taken his gun from him. But instead, he talked about his problems at home and what was causing it. Sometimes we have to take the hit. We have to understand that there's consequences for standing up for somebody else. And understand that that's the risk we take. Being willing to stand. But I think I'm going to leave it there. And I hope you all enjoyed the conversation. I hope I didn't ramble too much or piss anybody off. And I know I'm kind of leaving it on a downer, but I just want people to know that, you know, standing up for someone doesn't solve everything. But it'll make you feel better. It'll give you a sense of control over your little corner of the world. And if that someone is you, stand up for yourself. If that someone is over there, stand up for them. If you see somebody that needs it, try and do something about it. Even if that do is walk over to them and say, hey, how you feeling after the boss dressed you down? You okay? I know I'm going a little overtime. I felt strongly about a lot of things tonight. But I think it is time for me to put it up because I'm just rambling at this point. I'm just keep going. And be excellent to each other.